What's next for transportation energy? On today's episode, a conversation with John Eichberger, Transportation Energy Institute's Executive Director, and Jeff Hove, TEI's Vice President, about the resilience of our liquid fuel system, even during extreme events like the upcoming hurricane season.
So very recently, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released their 2025 hurricane forecast, calling for an above normal hurricane activity in the Atlantic Basin area. And one of the things, Jeff, that we try to do at TEI is to help people understand how the liquid fuel system works and why it may be vulnerable to hurricane activity. And what that means for the transportation energy sector is that the majority of our refining capacity and our oil production and receiving areas right there in the Gulf Coast. When a hurricane hits, it can disrupt production, distribution, supply as far away as Washington State, New England, and a lot of people have no idea why. In 2016, we published a paper, the U.S. Fuel and Distribution Network, to really explain why the system is vulnerable to hurricanes, but at the same time, to demonstrate kind of the miracle of a system that consistently delivers $3 gasoline nationwide and does it with very few disruptions throughout the year. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I mean most of the disruption, or the price disruption, normally comes from traders that are queuing in on either it's a refinery turnover, seasonal turnover, or downtime for maintenance, and you see those big spikes in pricing. But for us to go through this number of hurricanes and be fairly cushioned from even that type of rhetoric or that type of talk is amazing.
Yeah, so this paper we published in 2016 was really just a 101 of how fuel gets from point A to point B. And I used to take policymakers down to the Gulf Coast and visit a refinery, a pipeline operation, a terminal, and a retail all in one day so they could see the process. If you think about it, we take more than 17 million barrels of oil a day. We boil it, we crack the molecules, we produce 12 to 20 different products out of the barrel, including gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. We take the transportation energy fuel, we put it in a storage units at the refinery. Then we load it into a pipeline. That pipeline goes to another storage terminal where it's mixed up with product from other refineries. Then it is put into pipelines to go to other terminals, and maybe it goes from there to other terminals throughout the country. And then it gets dropped into tanker trucks, driven to retail stations, dropped into underground storage tanks, sold to consumers for a very competitive price. I know consumers don't think it is. It's a very competitive price when you think about everything that went into getting it there. And I mean, I can probably count on two hands the number of times there's been a major disruption in my 25 years in the industry. We've had hurricanes, we've had Superstorm Sandy, we had 9/11, we've had some pipeline breaks, had some refinery outages, but for the most part, day in and day out, and this system is moving hundreds of billions of gallons of fuel throughout this country on a regular basis, and we don't really understand how it's done. And so, we really wanted to help explain this is a remarkable achievement day in and day out that people just, and they take it for granted. But when you really think about it, it really makes you scratch your head. You go, how do they do this all the time?
Yeah, it was especially when all those fuels, all those liquid fuels we're talking about, for the most part, all going down the same pipe, right? So the sequencing of the batches, followed by the pig, and separation of your distillate, your diesel fuels, and your gasolines, and then of course if there's avgas or aviation fuel in there, that is very sensitive. To be able to do all that through the pipeline network, and it was only really recently that actually right after 9/11, all of the pipeline maps went dark. I'm not sure if you remember that, but
I do.
That's all very sensitive, information, and so they blocked out. But if you get a chance and you can look at the pipeline distribution network across the country, it's pretty fascinating, and you can really see maybe some areas that aren't so well served. So they're even more sensitive to disruption, but those areas that are served by multiple pipelines, they've got cushions. And even if a terminal goes down, we still have transports that will start hauling from, out of state to bring it in and to cover those gaps. At that point, it becomes quite a bit of a chore, but I mean, we know we can do it.
It still is rare that you pull up to a gas station and they're out of fuel.
Yeah.
Even in disrupted events. So I encourage people, we're hitting hurricane season, so there is some vulnerability here. There is a potential of some shutdown of infrastructure. There's a potential of disruption of supply in the event of a major storm. But if you understand how the system works, it's easier to anticipate what may happen and to really appreciate the complexity of the system, the efficiency of the system. And the other thing that's really amazing is when we do have a catastrophic event that does shut down infrastructure, we get it back up and running pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that's remarkable in itself.
Yeah. I know, and every state has this emergency response center, especially during hurricane season, where they are monitoring the hurricane so closely. And if they have to divert fuels for emergency responders, all of that stuff is going on in the background. So if you pull up to a fuel station and the lines are long, have some patience and understand that we're trying to keep hospital generators going. We're trying to keep, all this critical infrastructure, online. And so if there's a little bit of inconvenience at the pump, just understand that is going on. And you got state officials that are working 24/7 under those situations.
And remember that, most of the time you don't have to wait. And that's pretty darn special. So if people are interested in knowing more about it, we published a paper. It was December 1st, 2016. We published it. It's called Assessment of the U.S. Fuel Distribution Network, transportationenergy.org under our research side, and everything that we publish is free of charge. So if you're interested in how the market works and what may happen in the event of a disruption, check it out. It's an easy read, but it's a valuable read for understanding how the market works.
What's Next for Transportation Energy is a production of the Transportation Energy Institute. Find out more about us at transportationenergy.org.